All right, welcome back to Blackboard Breakdowns. We started a series last week where we're talking about how to read different concepts. Now, the playbook is all about why we design those concepts a certain way. This series is about what exactly we're looking for defensively. Who are we looking at defensively and how do we read the different concepts? Okay, you guys will remember that when we look at different concepts, we kind of break them down by different kinds of concept reads, okay? Corner off reads, okay, middle open or middle closed reads, coverage-based reads, or all. Yeah, all is obviously a play that can be read or used against any coverage that we see, but most plays aren't like that. So we've got to figure out when we look at different concepts exactly what we want to use them against. And these are the different ways that I break it down. Okay, last week we talked about hitch and hiss, all based on having the hitch on the outside, corner off type reads, and then we develop those things from there. Okay, today we're going to advance but stay in the quick world. Okay, so we're going to talk about plays that I call combo and slant. Okay, so let's start with combo. We've got our little cheat sheet over here on the right hand side. Again, as we're going through this, can always reference that. Okay, what are those 4 different ways in which we look at different concepts? Okay, corner off, middle closed, middle open is what MC and MO stand for. Coverage read, okay, based on a particular type of coverage, and then all. All right, so combo. Combo is a play, and again, I call it combo because most of the quicks that we run have 2 guys going in similar directions, okay? Hitch, both guys are running hitch. Slant, as you'll see in a minute, both guys are running slant. We call combo because that means one guy's going in, one guy's going out, so it's a combination quick read, okay? So let me move this corner back here and move this free safety over to the middle. All right, we're going to set up basically a cover 3 type look here. All right, drop strong safety inside. Could go either way there. But the combo, if you've been following along on playbook, combo is a slant on the outside and a flat on the inside. Okay, a lot of people call it different things. It's in every playbook. Okay, and when do we want to read combo? All right, so combo is really a cover 3, or you could say cover 1 beater, meaning that there's one guy in the middle of the field, or a middle closed look is what we're looking for when we attack with combo. We know if it's a middle closed look, all right, that we're going to have a linebacker in this particular situation that is responsible for the hook to flat area of the field. Okay, so anytime we can get one guy isolated right here, okay, we can read this combo play. All right, we've got our slant back behind it. We've got our flat coming out. We are going to force this guy to either hold here so we can take the flat, or push with the flat so we can take the slant behind him. All right, oftentimes that Sam linebacker is going to be inside of number 2 or inside of our Y in this particular case. And so what we like about that, now let me just go back and reference. Usually the Sam backer is going to be inside. If they happen to drop the strong safety down, now that strong safety could drop down outside of Y, and it can change what we're thinking on the play, but still, bottom line is we're going to read this hook flat defender, whether it's a strong safety or whether it's a Sam coming down. But we only want one guy in that position. Otherwise, not a great play for us because, right, we need this guy to have to cover all the way to the flat. Otherwise, not a good play. So it starts there. We like it against a middle closed look, free safety in the middle of the field, okay, where we've got one defender there. Just to break this down a little bit, right? If we have a corner there, so they roll to some kind of cover 2, safety goes over the top. We obviously don't like this because we've got a guy sitting in the flat to take the flat. We've got a guy sitting in the hook to take the hook, and we don't stretch any one defender in that particular look. So we don't like it against a cover 2 look. We don't like it against a cover 4 look. Okay, so again, you say to yourself, well, we've only got one guy here that's covering the hook to flat area, which is true to a degree, but we have to recognize this free safety. This free safety as we talked about earlier in breakdowns, when Y goes to the flat, this free safety frees up to be able to squat and jump anything outside of him. So if this Sam buzzes hard to the flat like he would normally do in quarters, we think, okay, we've got the slant, but we've got a safety sitting right here to either pick the ball off or hit our receiver. Thus, we don't like it against 2 or 4 or any middle open look because they've got somebody sitting there to take one of the 2 receivers if this Sam backer plays it correctly. All right, so let's put this guy back. We'll keep our corner off here. Corner doesn't have to be off as long as the middle's closed, right? He can still be pressed up there if he's playing cover 1 or just playing a press bail in the cover 3. All right, so the idea now is how do we read this? Okay, we know what coverages we read it against. We talked about that already, but how do we read this? Okay, the first thing that you'll hear me talk about quite often when we're talking about reading coverages is we want to force defenders to cover width and depth. Okay, they have to cover width and depth. If we allow them to just cover one or the other, then our play isn't nearly as good. Life is much easier on this defender. All right, so the first thing we want to look at is the depth of that linebacker. Okay, where is this linebacker lined up? Okay, let's just say a lot of linebackers will line up right about the 4.5, 5-yard mark. Okay, so let's say he's 4.5 yards. He's just tucked inside of Y. All right, so first thing we know is we've got leverage on this guy already, so the Y's just outside of him. Okay, as you learned in playbook, we like to run our flats where the Y gets width and depth at the same time. We don't ever push up the field and then go to the flat because all it does is hold off this read. We want this guy to move as fast as he possibly can to give the quarterback a read so he knows exactly where he's going with the football. So we're going width and depth at the same time, meaning if we already have leverage on him and we're going to gain more leverage on him, he has got to make a decision right now. So if that's the case, he's sitting at 4.5, 5 yards, okay? We talk about width and depth. If he simply covers with width, so in other words, he stays at 4.5 yards and he simply goes out to try to match the Y, okay? He is only covering the width of the field. So he's not ever chasing down and cutting down the depth here. Meaning if we're running the route at 2.5 yards and he's sitting at 4.5, 5 yards, we've got 2 yards of space in which to throw this flat route. So if I'm reading this and this guy goes straight sideways and I already have leverage on him, you can take that flat every single time. If he never cuts down the space between himself and the Y, that is a win for us. We will put the ball on him, a good throw when you have 2.5 yards of space and you have a little bit of leverage by your Y, a good throw to the outside. He is falling forward to 4.5, 5 yards at least because this guy's got to meet him there and make the tackle. So if he's just covering width, you can take the Y. If he's just covering width, there's also a chance if he covers fast with just width, right, that you could hit the slant back behind it. So both are possibilities, but the flat is where we always want to start. We want to force these guys to cover us, and anytime we can get outside by the numbers and hit a guy on time with accuracy, getting up the numbers, we know there's no other bodies out there. So a good throw with leverage out there can oftentimes be a big play for us. But we know on this play we'd like to hit the slant. We'd like to get that guy up on the safety. So if this guy just covers width, okay, you could hit both of these guys. You've got the depth factor for the Y, okay, and you've got the movement width factor so you can hit the Z back behind him. What we have to be careful about, though, is if our Z is doing his job right, or if he happens to shrink this and shorten his route at all, so he ends up hitting this instead of at 5 yards, he hits it at 4 yards. If this guy is simply getting width, I've seen so many times where this guy runs into our slant. So we're going to throw the slant because this guy's moving really fast to the flat. We're going to throw that slant, and as we come out of our break, this guy runs right into him because he's still sitting at his depth. And that's why the depth and width is so important. He stays at his depth. Be ready to take that flat every single time and force him to have to cut down that area in which he's covering so he can make that tackle as soon as the catch is made. When that happens, now it opens up our slant route. So if this defender he is covering width and depth, so he's trying to shrink the space between him and the flat defender while keeping leverage as best he can to the outside. Now you see where it gives us an advantage, okay? So still may have the flat there, but he's condensing the amount of space or how open our Y is. But by shrinking this down to 2.5, 3 yards, now he opens up that second window. Our Z should have no problem going up over the top of him, and thus when we want to throw the slant. This guy covers width and depth. This guy attacks the line of scrimmage while trying to cover the Y. That's when we take the slant back behind him. He goes straight width. We've got to determine what we want to do there, but all I'm going to tell you is he just gets width, and we've got leverage by the Y. The Y is a good read every single time and force this Sam backer to have to make the tackle and prevent the Y from getting at least 5 yards on the play. That is a win for us. Okay, so that's if the Sam backer is sitting at that 4.5, 5 yard range. Okay, when we talk about width and depth, okay, let's say this Sam defender now wants to cover from 2.5 or 3 yards depth. Okay, now we've just taken the depth out of the equation. In other words, we're basically seeing that this guy right now has put himself in a position where he's going to be in a tough place to cover that Z receiver, right? If he's going to cover the Z receiver now, he's going to have to, once again, get width and depth going backwards. You don't see a lot of guys do that where they're getting width and depth going backwards when their primary receiver in front of them, the Y, is going straight to the flat. It can still happen. These guys are taught, right, to get width and depth and hold off and make guys throw things underneath. But so now we're reading the width and depth of the Sam linebacker in the opposite direction. We go right outside. We can gain leverage on this Sam linebacker. But if he plays with width, now he's already condensed that space between the Y and himself because he's lined up tighter. So now it becomes a tighter throw and a tougher throw. And if we complete this, he's right on top of our receiver to make the tackle and hold us to that 2.5, 3 yard gain, which is not the case if he's playing width from 4.5 yards. Okay, so that's the first part of it. Now we come out and he's condensed and he's not at that depth, and we're thinking to ourselves, man, I'm taking the slant all day long as this guy doesn't create his depth back into that hook area. So the same holds true. If you see this guy and he's crossing over and running sideways, we are thinking slant in this case because he can't affect the slant from that depth. Okay, if he comes off and he's getting some width but getting depth at the same time, by creating that depth there, it's only going to give us better leverage with the Y. So that depth out of there, we see that. We can throw that Y, and once again, not only is he dropping to that 4.5, 5 yard marker, but he's going backwards while he's doing that. And so our read is off of this defender. The question becomes, where is the alignment originally? Okay? Where is his depth originally? Where is his position originally? Inside of Y, outside of Y. We didn't talk about that yet, but we put him outside of Y. Now we don't have the leverage on Y right off the bat, but he's playing with more width. So now we're kind of taking him, or he's putting himself in a position where you feel like he's going to grab that Y every time because he's sitting outside. But regardless of where he's at, what we have to read is the width and depth of this guy. 5 yards, okay? We're going to see the width, but we got to realize, does he cover depth? Does he shrink this position here? If he's inside, okay, he's going to go with some width. We've got to determine, does he stay with this width, giving us the Z, or does he drop with some depth and allows us to throw the Y? Same when he's out here. Where is he at? 4.5, 5 yards, okay? Let's see what he does. If he sits here at 4.5, 5 yards, doesn't get as much width because he's outside, now we can throw the Y. If he stays at 4.5, 5 yards, we get that leverage out on him, and he stays at that depth, we can still throw the Y. But because he's wide, it doesn't take as much width movement for us to be able to hit the Z back behind him. The one thing that I'll always say to you guys is we want to make sure that we line up for the slant because we don't want to be late on the slant. Line up for the slant, and if this guy shows us that he's going to hold in here and take it away, it's easier to recover to the flat on the outside than it is to recover back to the slant. So that becomes key. Width and depth of this defender. See where he starts, see where he goes. Okay, both of those things are vital. Too often I see guys that just see movement one direction or the other, and they say, well, he matched to the flat, so I wanted to throw the slant. Well, he kept his depth, ran into our slant. Now we don't have a good option. Okay? By the same token, we see a guy here in a tight alignment, okay? And he moves this way and then kind of holds it off in this particular case, but he never gets the depth. So we say to ourselves, oh, well, he held in that position there, and we don't take the right read off of where that guy is going. So we always have to make sure that we know wherever this guy's going, right? Is he getting that depth? If he's getting that depth and holding, okay, it's vital to know slant becomes a little bit tougher. If he's simply getting that width and holding his width, but he's closer to the line of scrimmage, now we understand what we want to try to do in that situation as well. But always trying to see this guy and whether he's covering width or depth. Due to time, we have split this blackboard breakdown into 2 segments. So next week we will pick up where we left off and talk about the read of the slant combination.